Hi, this is Daniela, and welcome to Bestie Life, the podcast, where we help you stop burnout now. If you're tired of running on empty, juggling all the things, and wondering when your life is supposed to feel better, you're in the right place. This show is your go-to space for real talk and practical strategies to help you protect your energy, create balance, and actually enjoy the life you're working so hard for. You'll get a mix of solo episodes and honest conversations with guests. My goal is to help you feel less alone, more empowered, and way more in control of your time and energy and well-being. So let's get into it. Hi, this is Daniela with Bestie Life, the podcast. And today I'm excited to be with Sebastian Koellner. He is a chief mindsetter at his business. He is a former accidental leader turned high performance coach and helps founders and executives break free from the invisible pressure of success. He works on identity level transformation, helping to guide leaders to master their inner world so they can lead with calm, clarity, and conviction. And he does that all through the power of mindset, which I am so in line with as well. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation, Sebastian.
Hi, Daniela. Thanks for having me. And let's do some mind setting, shall we?
Absolutely. Can you share a little bit more about your journey to become a mindsetter, to work with executives and leaders in this way?
Sure. The first part of that is actually more of the personal journey, which I think is true for a lot of coaches, right? So why mindsetter? Because when you look at the word mindset, it's actually a misnomer.
Okay.
Because it's not set. You can change it anytime you choose to. Now, that's not easy work, but it's quite possible. And that's why I turned it into an active verb, right?
Okay.
In that. But I think one of the examples is probably my own journey. If you had met me and we'd had this conversation, we probably wouldn't have had this conversation because I was arrogant in order to cover up my insecurities. But if we had had this conversation in my late teens or early 20s, I would have told you, Daniela, the reason I get stuff done and hit every goal I set for myself is because I don't have emotions that get in the way. And exactly, you might have looked at me slightly curiously and said, Sebastian, but everybody has emotions. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I don't have it. Now, both sides of the story are true. It's simply I lived so far up in my head that I had everything else locked away in a dungeon with, 7 iron gates and chains locked away. And that mask covering up the I'm not enough and I really do crave for something else, on the outside looked like success, but on the inside took a lot of energy to uphold. And I knew something was off, and I, cognitively consumed shelf help, if you will, right? Books, courses, all this kind of stuff. I always found a great idea in everything I read, and before I went and did anything with it, I was on to the next book and found the next great idea, right? So I consumed self-development for a number of years. And I was in my mid-30s with my third child on the way when I realized, something's really off. I'm not excited about a child being born. I have a six-figure job and ticked all the boxes, then why does it not feel the way I thought it finally would? And to this day, I don't quite know how I found this guided meditation, but it was a guided meditation by Marissa Peer that it was already done. She was already taking everybody back out of it, a recorded one, right? All of a sudden, the guy who didn't have emotions, I found myself just bawling, crying my eyes out on my living room floor because somehow, somewhere, I touched a memory from when I was about 18 months old. And I know at the time my mom was deeply depressed after having lost, or rather than bringing home my baby brother at 8 months, she had lost right? The child in pregnancy. And she was home alone with me at a time when depression wasn't diagnosed nor treated. And to this day, I have this memory of this dark place. And that was the first time that I actually connected with it. And a lot of the pain, a lot of the things I didn't even have words for just came welling up. Right? And that took quite a while. And when I got up from that and went to the bathroom to put myself back together, two other things really happened. One is I saw myself in the mirror, and it's strange to put in words, but it's like for the first time I actually recognized myself as me rather than somehow stranger's face I'd been shaving for 20 odd years or so. And the other thing that came from deep within me somewhere that was, wow, this is really powerful. And I want to do that for other people.
Right.
And that's what started me on the journey of actually doing the development, right? I studied hypnotherapy. I went and learned more about coaching. And when you go through those programs, well, who does everybody practice on? Themselves. So I finally put it into work. I connected with my emotions. I faced the inner voices, the inner critic, my Mr. Perfect and all of those things. And initially I did all of that for myself. Now I applied it as in my job as a leader in, organizations. And at some point I realized, well, you know what? I'm not the only one who screwed up. Well, screwed up is a harsh term, but it's like, all these people, when they actually lower their mask for just a little bit, most people who are outwardly successful feel similar to how I felt on the inside. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
And that's what really got me to the point of first coaching internally. And then when my job more or less became obsolete and my boss said, I'd love for you to move over to this business unit and help me do what you've done over here. I said, you know what? I think I'll take the golden handshake and I'll just go and do what it's time to do.
Do
And
your
so
own thing.
that's how I got to, right? I bring the 15 plus years of international leadership experience, but I think more importantly, I bring the work of, well, about 10 years now of doing that deep inner work, right? I can look at my clients and I say, I know this is painful right now. And I know you're afraid that if you go there, you might fall apart and never be able to put yourself back together. But I also know what's on the other side of that. So
Right.
if you're courageous enough to go on that journey, then let's have that brave conversation and help you remember who you truly are.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I truly believe in that mind body connection. The body always remembers, the body
Yes.
always stores, even like you said, from the neck up, you thought you were crushing it. You were, in this detached state. But, oh, and I don't know if you had any like physical ailments, signs, symptoms, as far as how your body was releasing and coping with a lot of those things. But I know a lot of the people I work with, they might be experiencing the physical part, and that's what they target when it comes to how they're addressing it versus looking at, well, what got me here physically? What is happening at that higher level that will never kind of get better physically if I don't address?
So that's the part in rapid transformational therapy. There would be a lot of that. Now, I only use that as a tool in the
Mm-hmm.
coaching. So I don't come, usually my clients don't come to me because of physical ailments.
Right.
Right. But you can take that mind-body connection in that way. It's like if you don't let out emotions, your body will help you suppress it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't cry the tears, your body will cry in other ways. So I firmly
Yeah.
believe that. Or at the very least, the way I experienced it for years was what I now call sort of a latent depression, because it's not really depression, right? It's really suppression. If you
Right.
if you dissociate from negative emotion, quote unquote negative emotions, we can go deeper into that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing, but you can't selectively suppress emotions, right? You either dim everything
Mm-hmm.
or you allow yourself to feel everything. So if you say, if sad is not a thing for you, then happy doesn't exist either, to put it in
Right.
very simple terms, right? The other way, though, that the mind-body connection works is it works in the moment. When
Mm-hmm.
you're in your usual state, whether that is somewhat sad, somewhat, you pity yourself, you feel stressed, whatever your preferred emotional state is. Now, let's be real clear. If you're a driven achiever, stress is just another word for fear, even
Mm-hmm.
though you don't like to hear that. Right? There's a certain way that you breathe. There's a certain way you hold your shoulders. There's a certain way you carry your stress, right? If you change the way you hold your body, it does affect your emotional state right in that moment as well, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
mind-body connection actually works both ways.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more then about the model that you work within, with a team, with leadership, things like that. They come to you. What is kind of either the problems that you typically hear, as well as maybe the first couple of steps in that process to help even someone who's just listening, and isn't even a leader at this point, help self-identify what some of those initial mindsetter type strategies might be?
Okay. So reducing it to strategy is always a bit tricky, but let's do two things. Let's define the accidental leader first, and then let's do this by way of a client story as an example.
Yep.
Cool. So
Yeah.
so what do I mean by accidental leader? It's what's shown in the background here. Most people think that leadership is earned, right? If you're working in a job and if you're really good at your job, at some point you get promoted to a leadership position. Similar scenario, if you start your own business and you're really you're usually really passionate about your product, about your service, about solving your customer's problem. And if you do a really good job of that, now you hire people and you grow. Okay. Both situations create a similar challenge. And that is being really good at your job or being really good at building the product or the service doesn't necessarily make you a good leader.
Mm-hmm.
On the contrary, doing everything yourself is probably going to get in the way of being a really good leader, right? So
Yeah.
that's the disconnect. If you promote your highest achievers into leadership positions, they got to forget and unlearn a lot of things that made them successful in order to be successful leaders. That's why I say it's not leadership isn't earned. Leadership is actually learned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I come in. So what does that look like? I have a client over in Portland area, and he runs a successful, good seven-figure IT company,
Mm-hmm.
about 30 people in his staff. And from a conversation we had by being in a shared group. He goes, can we talk? And what he says, he goes, I've done pretty well, but I struggle with a few things. For example, it's really hard for me to say no to my people, even though I know I should, but I also do care about them,
Hmm.
right? But most importantly, at the end of the day, I'm exhausted and I haven't even gotten to the things that I, as the leader, and I, as myself, really needed and wanted to do. And it's because my calendar is just packed. Like when you talk about feeling like a calendar on legs, that's me, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Like,
that's a
oh,
great way to
okay,
put
well, let's
it.
have that conversation, right? Shall we? And so what I call the rewired leader protocol really starts from, okay, what's driving, in his case, the hesitation to say no? Right? What
Hmm.
do you connect with that conflict with right? Putting yourself before others. Like, is that selfish? Is that like what's the story you have around that? And then who do you actually want to be? Like that's the identity work, right? And who does your company need you to be? Right? And when
Hmm.
you line that up and outlined it, he goes, huh. And I said, so pick one or two of your people. Like in the first couple of weeks, it's like pick one or two of your people, huh? Where do those meetings go longer than they need to? Well, it's because we go from one topic to another. I'm like, okay. And even when you go into that meeting, how do you feel about this meeting? Are you excited? Are you energized? Are you dreading? I was like, oh, I'm just dreading. I'm like, okay. Now, what do you get to change so that those meetings are number one, energizing for you, number two, effective again, and number three, you do them in half the time. He goes, half the time. I'm like, yeah, and I'm being generous. Right? And so then we work through some tactical things, but most importantly, we work through, okay, I want you to show up in the meeting as the CEO. Okay, now show me, what does that look like? Right? When you're in your CEO state, how do you hold yourself? And so we gave him an anchor, as I said, right, in his physiology, in his body. And we basically just trained, like, do this before every meeting. And over time, he restructured the meetings. He negotiated the agreements he had with his key people.
Hmm.
And just last week, we had what was basically our last call for this year. And he shared, you know what? With the work I've been doing with you in the last 3 months, this is the first time that at the end of a year, I'm really proud and excited of what we have done because a few key members of my team stepped up and we didn't just hit our goals, we blew right through them. But
Awesome.
more importantly, I'm not worried at all about next year. And that has never happened
Hmm.
in all this time before. Now, I can tell you the secret, and he got it too, because the worry never had anything to do with what was going on in his business or in the
Yeah.
economy. It was always stories up here
Yeah.
that took him out of CEO mode and into pleaser or victim. And when you
Right.
rewire that, when you retrain yourself, and it's different things for different people that get in the way,
Yes.
you can now show up from the identity of the leader you get to be.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely kind of harnessing that growth mindset principle
Mm.
at a more targeted level with being a leader. Like you said, kind of envisioning yourself as the CEO and what does that look like? What do they need from you to be that person? And it's not these massive things. I'm sure they were subtle. I'm sure they were small incremental shifts, like you said, that then started to show up different physically, that then showed up different in the relationships. And it's those other pieces where that really takes the momentum and runs.
Yes, and I think there's really sort of three components, right, that go into making that actual inner transition and that
Hmm.
shift. So one we already talked about, right? If you hold your body differently, you can shift very quickly. The other is really training yourself on what do you focus on. So that's all about what questions do you ask and what meaning do you give whatever is happening, right? Is it happening to you or is it happening for you? Is this a problem or is this an opportunity? Now, this might sound to some like pink glasses, rainbows, and unicorns or whatever, but it's actually true. What is going well is always available. We just have a tendency not to focus on that. We tend to focus on where did I screw up? What didn't go so well? Like, what should we do better? Right. And this all feels like, well, yeah, this is drive and all of that. No, but you get to focus also on what's going well. What do you
Hmm.
want more of? Right. You get to focus on being grateful for the things that did work.
Yeah.
And then the last part to complete the triangle really is language.
Hmm.
And this can get really tactical and practical. Observe yourself. How often do you say, I should, I need
Yeah.
to, I have to, right? This is this sort of thing like if you should all over yourself, you never feel in control of your life because it always says who.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, simple thing there. If you replace I should, I have to, I need to, I must with, well, first take a minute. Feel what does it feel like when you say I should, I have to. There's no way you say that powerful. There's just no
Yeah.
way, right? It
You
feels
just
like I
even
have.
made a face when you said the word should, like your
Exactly.
body
Like
on
you
like
can't help it, right? There's an
hmm.
instant sort of reaction through every fiber of your being. Now, see what happens when you just switch the language. I choose to. I
Hmm.
get to. Maybe I want to. That's ideal. But even if I don't really want to, maybe I commit to. Now I've
Yeah.
taken back my power. Now you can't say that with the same kind of shoulder
Yeah.
slump forward. So that's why these three pieces, right? Your physiology, and here you see language, physiology go together, right? Focus and it all goes together. Your physical component, what do you focus on, and what language do you use, especially in that inner chatter that is constantly going on in here. And then, of course, as a leader with your people as well.
Yeah, no, and I love using the word yet as well. You talked about get to, want to, just even the possibility of yet, just because we haven't up till now doesn't mean it's not possible. I had read somewhere that they had done a study and we have like 80 to 90,000 thoughts a day. Like you talk about that inner chatter, like you are talking to yourself more than you talk to anybody else in the whole entire world. And as part of that study, they determined, I think that 80% of our thoughts are negative, unfortunately, and 95% of them are on repeat. So you look at the power of just changing that language, like you said, the focus, and even I like to use the word the filter that you're looking through as well, how it's coming in, like you said, glass half full versus glass half empty, those types of things makes a huge difference.
It does. And you don't even have to get esoterical and believe in the law of attraction or any of those things. It's just you have a filter, what you call, right? You have the science to it, the reticular activating system. But if you leave that aside and make it very, very practical, it's you can play this game.
Yeah.
And there's a fun game. Well, maybe we won't play it because everybody won't have a chance to play it now. But the equivalent is this. You all experience this when you consider buying a certain type of car as your new car. The moment you make that emotional connection and decision, when you go out, all of a sudden you see this car everywhere. It's like, oh, those bastards, they all went and bought my car, right?
Everyone's got the red minivan you thought you were going to buy.
Right? Exactly. Like, no, actually, those were always there, but they had no emotional connection. So they didn't rise to the level of, oh, this is relevant information. So it got filtered out, right? Similarly, with the questions you're asking yourself, like, why does this always happen to me? Your mind isn't going to challenge on, well, this, and come back and say, well, it doesn't actually happen to you. Your mind says, well, if this always happens to us, there's got to be a reason. And it will give you a reason.
Yeah.
It will prove whatever you believe because that's how it's designed. Kind of like ChatGPT, be careful, right? It's designed to generate a response, even if it's nonsensical. And you get to be aware of that. Now, the challenge with that is, if you're saying, take me in your mid-30s, those 95% repetitive thoughts, you've had hundreds of thousands of repetitions of those by then. So those are like 4 or 6 lane highways that your autopilot just hammers down at 120 miles an hour. So the real trick is, how do you stop it? And how do you create new thoughts that become as automatic? And I think that's really the work of rewiring your identity.
Yeah.
Because that isn't done. I mean, the decision to change it goes a big step along the way. And then you get to do the reps. And at first, that feels awkward. At first, that feels unfamiliar.
Call it a practice for a reason, though. It takes that time, that practice. I always use the analogy. It's kind of like you go hiking in the woods. The path that everybody's gone down for years is easy to follow because it's been trampled. The grass is flattened out. It's easy to see. When you're creating these new thoughts, these new ways of thinking, you need to go over it and over it, clear the brush out of the way, get rid of the kind of obstacles or things that are distracting you in order to make it just as easy for your body to fall into that autopilot mode with.
And that's where, when I do my own work, when I work with my clients, inevitably for myself, I always come and like, really? It's this thing again? Right? I get to pull back another layer. My clients, after 2 or 3 months, they go, oh, wait a minute, I just saw it. I'm like, yep, you just did. That's why we keep the space. And that's why you do this work. And it's never done.
Yeah.
Because the patterns you've built initially pop up randomly, right? A smell might put you back into your grandma's kitchen for a happy childhood memory, but similarly other things. And the thing is, it's a survival mechanism that we look mainly at what's wrong or what could go wrong. Because there was a time when the things that were unknown or out of the ordinary might have killed us.
Yeah.
Okay? And that part of our brain hasn't caught on to the fact that social media isn't going to kill you. At work, a rejection isn't going to kill you, but it's still operating on a very base level of rejection means they might kick you out of the tribe, and by yourself, that's a death sentence. So there's nothing wrong with you. It's just about understanding what really drives us. Yeah? And the other thing that goes into that is sometimes we look at people and we go, how could they do that? And that's a great question, because ultimately you can explain any and all human behavior, especially addictions and all kinds of nonsensical things, with they're always trying to meet their most important needs.
Right.
And when you look at it through that lens, that's what you and I are doing, and that's what everybody else is doing. right? We just put a different emphasis on, is certainty more important, safety, financial security more important to me, or is it adventure and variety and, new experiences? Am I putting a higher emphasis on significance, my own achievement, my own accolades, and, just climbing the ladder? Or am I putting more stake by love and connection? That will change. You can see how one or the other will change your style and leadership and what you do. It's not wrong one way or another, but if you want to change how you show up, it is helpful to look at what's driving your behavior so far and what do you want to emphasize in your behavior as a leader moving forward.
Absolutely. As a leader, as a parent, as a partner, as a friend, all these things kind of have been ingrained in us for years. I can remember hearing the thoughts that you have to hustle hard to get ahead. You got to be available 24/7. As a mom, you need to put everybody first. You need to be a martyr to be a good mom almost, and
Exactly.
rewiring those different ways of thinking in these different relationships and settings that you're in is part of that work. I'd love to know a little bit more, Sebastian, just as far as your own daily practices, because it sounds like definitely when you're first starting, there's a lot of intention. There's a lot of things that you're trying and seeing what works best for you. But obviously, over time, I think we all develop kind of a little bit of habits and routines and rituals that help it flow more seamlessly into our own days. And so I'd love to kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit with you as an expert. What are some of the things that just kind of fold easily into your day that you do on repeat without even realizing?
Without realizing, I don't know. I know what I've consciously built.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because that did take some work. There's a few things in my morning routine, and now you can have a big debate about what's the point of morning routines, all of that. But I stand by setting an intention for the day and putting a few rituals that reinforce right at the beginning of the day what you consciously want to focus on is a very useful. And so for me, that does involve some sort of stretching and exercise just to get my body moving and actually get the energy flowing. It also involves journaling, which sometimes it's just not just, sometimes it's gratitude journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's a concept of letters from love, where you basically say, right, love, what do I need to know today? And then you just let it flow through. You can call it stream of consciousness journaling, whatever floats your boat, but it's a way of processing thoughts and examining them, right, to see what's there and what's present. I do have some affirmations, incantations, if you will, that help me. And I do change those routines and adjust them at times as well. Very recently, I was in Florida for Date with Destiny, and there was technology there that was presented on the side of the event. And they do a great job helping you put your brain into the right frequencies for different states.
Oh,
and so now I've incorporated some of that into starting my workday because it helps me to focus. So I still always look at what's the next thing for me and how do I incorporate that. The key thing, I believe, is make it small in the beginning. Make it something that you can attach to already existing habits. So if say you want to just focus on, when we said focus before, right? Change the question. Yep. So if you're fighting against a question that you no longer want to ask and you want to be reminded of that new question or that new belief you want to reinforce, first of all, make it visible. Put it wherever you can, on your mirror in the bathroom, post it on your screen, right? Don't worry about what other people think. The lock screen of your phone, everywhere. And then every time you go to the bathroom, remind yourself, right? Mentally rehearse, practice that. Why? Because, well, for me at least, it happens frequently throughout the day and at different times of the day. It's a quiet space where usually people don't tend to interrupt you in the bathroom, right? Another good one to attach it to is every time I drink some tea, with the first sip, I make it a point to consciously remind myself what's the focus for today, what's the value I'm focusing on. And I think those are some tactical little practices that you can do. And if you're familiar with Atomic Habits, then you know this, right? Small. Yeah. And then essentially increase it. If you're not familiar, go get the book. It has a lot of practical tools in there. But, this is a good one, actually. We're about, a week away from setting New Year's intentions. My New Year's resolutions don't. Right? Yeah. Usually we write down 3 big things that are not really supported by the small rituals necessary to sustain them. And come middle of February, you basically gave up on them. Okay. Number 1, don't wait for January 1st. Do it today. Yes. There's no need to
do it throughout the entire year.
An arbitrary year. I do regular quarterly reviews on goals and on everything. I do weekly reviews on what worked and what didn't work. And I plan the next day at the end of the previous day, right? So smaller cycles mean you never have a bad month. You might have a bad day, and the other is if it helps you to set a big audacious goal, that's great. And then go and define what's the daily ritual that supports you getting there. What's the one little thing, if you do it every day and you just get better a little bit every day, that will over the course of 3 months, 6 months, 9 months actually get you moving in that direction, because that's much more powerful than trying to discipline your way to a big audacious goal where, if you're quite honest, that little voice in here already called BS on it anyway, because you don't believe you can actually do it.
Right. And that reverse engineering too, you're starting from the success and working backwards, make those steps, more than just checking off another thing on your to-do list. They make them part of the momentum in such a different way. So I appreciate you sharing it that way, Sebastian.
And on that note, get rid of that to-do list.
Yep, absolutely.
It's like, look, set 1 or 2 key things for your day, work through that, everything else will get filled up, no problem.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I love everything that you shared. It makes it definitely frames it in such a practical way, such a great visual for so many of these areas to make it applicable, to make it possible, and to start small. But if someone wants to dive in a little bit deeper, how can they find you? How can they work with you, Sebastian?
I think if you're on LinkedIn, the easiest way is just look me up. We'll share the link to my profile, start a conversation there. And if it is a good fit, we'll take that conversation offline and have, an actual call. The other is I'm happy to provide the email address. If you're not on LinkedIn, then go there. Other than that, I don't do a whole lot, because for me, it's more about the real conversations. And, most of my most recent clients came as referrals from other clients. Happy to do that. And I am always happy to have conversations like this and for people to follow up. And if you do right now, send me a message, and I have a little scorecard link I can send to everyone that might help you figure out where are you more accidental in your leadership still, and where you are already more conscious and intentional, and we'll go from there. And if you're more of a seasoned leader, but you're in this realm where my story started from, hey, I ticked all the boxes, but still doesn't feel the way I was hoping it would feel. Happy to have that conversation as well, because been there, done that.
Awesome. Awesome. And all of Sebastian's links will be live in the show notes below. So thank you so much for joining us today. I love this conversation. Definitely. Even as much as we talk a lot of the same language, hearing it in a different way, different style, always makes a huge difference. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you got something out of this episode that really made you feel seen, supported, or just a little bit more grounded. If you have any questions or thoughts, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're up for it, please leave me a 5-star review. That will help more people find the show and join this community. I'll leave you with 2 of my favorite quotes. Alone we may be strong, but together we're stronger. And when we support each other, incredible things happen. So let's keep showing up for ourselves and each other, and maybe even have some fun while we're at it. I'll talk to you soon.